Vivec is one of the most fascinating and mysterious figures in Elder Scrolls lore, a god, a warrior, a poet, and a ruler, all wrapped into one complex personality. Known as part of the Tribunal, Vivec helped shape the history and culture of Morrowind, standing as both a divine figure and a political leader for the Dunmer people. What makes Vivec unique isn't just his power or influence, but his very voice, both literally and figuratively. He was known for his eloquence, his teachings, and his ability to inspire through words, as seen in the legendary 36 Lessons of Vivec. But then, something strange happened. Vivec fell silent. He stopped speaking altogether, leaving many to wonder what caused this sudden and tragic silence. It's a mystery that has puzzled fans and scholars of Tamriel alike. This silence isn't just an absence of words. It's a profound moment in the story of Vivec and the wider lore of the Elder Scrolls universe. To understand why Vivec stopped speaking, we need to look at his origins, his rise to godhood, the powers that sustained him, and the events that led to his downfall. Vivec was not born a god. He was once a mortal who achieved divinity through the power of the Heart of Lorkhan, alongside the other members of the Tribunal. Their godhood came with immense responsibility and influence, but it also came at a cost. Over time, as the Tribunal's power waned and threats like Dagoth-Ur rose, Vivec's position became more precarious. The eruption of Red Mountain and the fulfillment of prophecies surrounding the Neteverine challenged the very foundation of Vivec's rule. As his power diminished and his authority was questioned, Vivec's silence can be seen as a symbolic and literal withdrawal from the world he once ruled so vocally. But was this silence a punishment, a choice, or something else entirely? Scholars and fans debate whether Vivec's silence is a form of spiritual transformation, a consequence of losing his connection to the divine source, or perhaps a mysterious new way of existing beyond mortal understanding. His silence raises many questions about power, divinity, and the limits of godhood in Tamriel. For the people of Morrowind, Vivec's silence had a deep impact. The Tribunal Temple, which had long been a pillar of faith and governance, faced uncertainty without his guiding voice. Politically and spiritually, the Dunmer had to navigate a world where one of their gods no longer spoke. Vivec's silence became more than just a personal tragedy. It shifted the balance of faith and power across Morrowind. Despite his silence, Vivec's legacy endures. His influence is felt in the culture, religion, and history of the Dunmer, and his story remains a key part of the Elder Scrolls universe. His silence, paradoxically, continues to speak volumes, reminding us of the complexities of divinity, the fragility of power, and the mysteries that make the Elder Scrolls lore so rich and compelling. This video will dive into the story behind Vivec's silence, exploring what really happened to the warrior poet god, what his silence might mean, and how his story shapes the world of Tamriel even now. Vivec is one of the most intriguing and complex figures in Elder Scrolls lore, a god who walks the line between divine power and mortal experience. Known as the warrior poet, Vivec is a member of the Tribunal, a trio of god kings who ruled over Morrowind for centuries. He is revered by the Dunmer people as both a spiritual leader and a protector, a being who embodies strength and wisdom in equal measure. Vivec's story begins as a mortal born to the Chimer, ancestors of the Dunmer, and through a series of events involving the Heart of Lorkhan, he ascended to godhood alongside Almalexia and Sotha Sil. His rise to divinity was marked by both incredible power and controversy, as the Tribunal's godhood came not from birth but from the use of the Heart's energy, a source of immense and dangerous power. As a god, Vivec is unique because he doesn't just wield power through force. He's also a master of words, poetry, and philosophy. His teachings, most famously the 36 Lessons of Vivec, blend myth, history, and spiritual guidance in a way that captivates and challenges followers. These lessons reveal a being who is at once confident and cryptic, mixing humor, humility, and divine authority in a poetic form. Vivec's personality is marked by contradictions. He is both fierce and compassionate, a warrior in battle and a teacher in peace. This duality makes him not just a god to be worshipped, but a character with depth and nuance, capable of inspiring devotion and debate. Physically, Vivec is described as striking, often depicted with both masculine and feminine features, embodying a balance of opposites that reflects his complex nature. This androgyny is part of what makes him stand out among the gods and lends him an air of mystery and power. During his rule, Vivec founded the city of Vivec, a sprawling metropolis that became a cultural and political center of Morrowind. His influence extended beyond religion into governance, architecture, and daily life, making him a central figure in Dunmer society. Vivec's story also includes many tales of his exploits, battles, and relationships, especially with his fellow tribunal members and his followers. He was a protector of his people, but also someone who could be ruthless when needed, a god who was very much involved in the mortal world. However, Vivec's godhood and power were not eternal. The events of the late Third Era, including the rise of the Nerevarine and the fall of the Tribunal, challenged his divine status and changed the course of Morrowind's history. This shift set the stage for the mysterious silence that would later envelop him, raising questions about his fate and the nature of his divinity. Despite all this, Vivec remains a figure of immense importance in Elder Scrolls lore, symbolizing the intersection of mortal struggle and divine ambition. His legacy is woven into the culture and history of the Dunmer, and his complex character continues to fascinate fans, scholars, and storytellers. Understanding who Vivec is gives us insight into not just a god, but a symbol of the Elder Scrolls' rich storytelling, where gods are flawed, powerful, and deeply human in their stories. The Tribunal, Vivec, Almalexia, and Sotasil rose to godhood through a power source unlike any other in Tamriel, the heart of Lorkhan. This divine artifact, the core of the missing god, Lorkhan's sacrifice, holds immense and dangerous energy, capable of shaping reality itself. The Tribunal used this power to elevate themselves from mere mortals to living gods, a transformation that changed the course of Morrowind's history forever. Before the Tribunal's ascension, the Dunmer people lived under harsh and unstable conditions, struggling against external threats and internal divisions. The arrival of the Tribunal brought a new era of order, prosperity, and spiritual guidance. They ruled as god kings, revered and feared, combining religious authority with political control. The heart of Lorkhan was central to their power. It was a source they tapped into to perform miracles, sustain their immortality, and enforce their rule. However, this power came with a heavy cost and moral ambiguity. Unlike the traditional Aedra, who sacrificed themselves to create the mortal plane and became diminished in the process, the Tribunal's use of the heart was a more direct and selfish claim to divine power. It set them apart as unique beings, but also sowed seeds of tension and distrust. The Dwemer, ancient and highly advanced elves of Morrowind, were obsessed with the heart and sought to harness its power for themselves. Their attempts culminated in the mysterious and catastrophic event known as the Disappearance, where the entire Dwemer race vanished from Nirn, leaving behind ruins and unanswered questions. Meanwhile, the Tribunal maintained their grip on the heart's power, using it to build their city of Vivec and maintain their divine presence among the Dunmer. Vivec, in particular, was a master of this power, blending it with his poetic wisdom and martial prowess to inspire and rule. Yet, the heart's influence was not without corruption. Dagoth-Ur, a former ally turned enemy, was twisted by the heart's power into a dangerous figure, threatening the very existence of Morrowind. The conflict between the Tribunal and Dagoth-Ur, fueled by the heart's energy, became a defining chapter in Dunmer history. The arrival of the Nerevarine, a prophesied hero, challenged the Tribunal's rule and ultimately led to the destruction of the heart itself. This act ended the Tribunal's immortality and shifted the balance of power in the region. Despite this, the legacy of the heart remains a powerful symbol of ambition, sacrifice, and the complex relationship between mortals and gods in Elder Scrolls lore. The Tribunal's story highlights how power can elevate but also isolate and corrupt, and how the quest for divinity shapes the fate of entire peoples. Their rise and fall are deeply tied to the mystery and magic of the heart of Lorkhan, making it one of the most pivotal elements in the mythology of Tamriel. The path to Vivec's silence is a complex and mysterious chapter in Elder Scrolls lore, one filled with betrayal, divine conflict, and the consequences of wielding godlike power. After the Nerevarine destroyed the heart of Lorkhan, the Tribunal's source of immortality and godhood was shattered, leaving them vulnerable. Amalexia's descent into madness and isolation strained the tribunal's unity, while Sotasil withdrew into his clockwork city, distancing himself from the political turmoil of Morrowind. Vivec, once a charismatic leader and warrior poet, faced growing challenges that threatened his role as protector and deity of the Dunmer. The years following the Heart's destruction were marked by increasing unrest, with Dagot Ur's return stirring conflict and rebellion. Vivec's attempts to maintain order were tested by these rising tensions and by his own changing nature. One significant event was the assassination attempt known as the Battle of Red Mountain, which left deep scars on Morrowind's landscape and its people. Throughout this period, Vivec's relationship with his followers and his own divinity began to fracture. Ancient texts and in-game lore hint at a profound internal struggle within Vivec, caught between his mortal origins and divine status, between duty and doubt. Some scholars and fans interpret his eventual silence as a voluntary withdrawal, a form of penance, or even a mysterious curse inflicted by enemies or fate itself. Others suggest darker possibilities, including divine punishment or a metaphysical transformation that left him unable or unwilling to speak. The symbolic imagery of Vivec's cracked face and sealed mouth appears in various writings and artworks, reinforcing the sense that his silence is more than just physical. It represents a fundamental loss or change in his identity. In the wake of these events, the Dummer people were left without the guidance and protection of their once vibrant God King. The silence of Vivec created a spiritual and political vacuum, contributing to further instability in Morrowind. Yet, despite this silence, his influence lingers through poetry, architecture, and the enduring legacy of his teachings. The mystery surrounding why Vivec stopped speaking continues to captivate fans and scholars alike, fueling debates and theories about the true nature of gods in the Elder Scrolls universe. Ultimately, the events leading to Vivec's silence reveal the fragility of divine power and the heavy burden of godhood, showing that even gods are not immune to loss, change, or silence. The story of Vivec's prophecy and trial is one of the most enigmatic and intriguing in Elder Scrolls lore, blending divine destiny with harsh judgment. Vivec, the warrior poet god, was not just a leader, but also a prophet whose words carried immense weight for the Dunmer people. Ancient prophecies foretold both his rise and a time of reckoning, hinting that his reign as a god king would eventually face profound challenges. According to the lore, Vivec's prophecy warned of a coming trial, one that would test his divine authority and his very existence. This prophecy is found scattered in cryptic verses throughout the Sermons of Vivec, a collection of poetic texts attributed to him. These writings reveal a god who knew his fate was intertwined with the fragile balance of power in Morrowind, and that his silence and eventual trial were not random events but part of a greater cosmic design. The trial itself, while never fully described in exact detail in-game, is widely interpreted as both a metaphysical and literal confrontation. It is suggested that Vivec was judged by higher powers, whether other gods, the tribunal as a whole, or even his own conscience, over the moral and spiritual costs of his godhood. His use of the Heart of Lorkhan's power, once seen as a blessing that elevated him, became a source of corruption and downfall. This trial questioned whether Vivec's actions were for the good of the Dunmer or a form of selfish ambition disguised as divine guidance. Some texts hint at a courtroom beyond mortal understanding, where Vivec faced accusations that led to his silence, a sealing of his voice as both punishment and protection. The trial can also be seen as symbolic of the internal struggle within Vivec between his mortal self and his divine persona, reflecting the tension between power and humility, hubris and wisdom. During and after this trial, the god's silence became a lasting testament to the cost of divine power and the inevitability of judgment. This moment marked a turning point not just for Vivec, but for the entire tribunal and the people of Morrowind, signaling the end of an era. The prophecy and trial remind us that even gods are subject to fate and consequence, and that the stories of power always carry the risk of downfall. For fans of the Elder Scrolls, this chapter deepens the mystery of Vivec, blending myth, poetry, and history into a rich tapestry that invites endless interpretation. Vivec's silence has sparked countless theories among fans and scholars of Elder Scrolls lore, each trying to explain why this once eloquent god ceased to speak. One popular idea is that Vivec's silence was a direct consequence of his trial, a punishment for overstepping divine boundaries or for the moral compromises he made while wielding the heart of Lorkhan's power. This theory suggests that his voice was literally sealed, either by other gods or by some higher cosmic force, to prevent him from influencing the world further. Another theory sees his silence as a voluntary act, a kind of self-imposed exile or meditation. After centuries of guiding the Dunmer and shaping Morrowind's destiny, Vivec may have chosen silence to reflect on his actions, to atone, or to prepare for an eventual return. This theory often ties into the idea that Vivec is more than just a god. He's a symbol of change and transformation, and silence represents a pause before a new chapter. Some fans believe Vivec's silence is linked to the fading power of the tribunal itself. With the destruction of the heart of Lorkhan and the rise of new forces, such as the Nerevarine and the Sixth House, the gods of the tribunal lost much of their divine strength, and Vivec's silence reflects that loss. It's as if, without his full power, he cannot, or chooses not to, speak, highlighting the fragile nature of godhood in Tamriel. There are also more mystical explanations, rooted in the complex metaphysics of the Elder Scrolls universe. Some say Vivec's silence is a form of transcendence, where he has moved beyond mortal comprehension and communication. His voice no longer belongs to the physical world, but exists in a higher plane or merged with the very fabric of Nirn. Others speculate that Vivec's silence is connected to his dual nature as both mortal and divine. Having once been a mortal man who ascended to godhood, his silence could symbolize the tension and conflict between these two states. He is trapped in a liminal space, unable to fully express himself in either realm. There are also darker theories, suggesting that Vivec's silence hides a secret too dangerous or powerful for mortals to hear. Perhaps he witnessed or caused something so profound that silence became the only way to contain it. This adds a layer of tragic mystery to his character, making him not just a silent god, but a silent keeper of forbidden knowledge. Whatever the reason, Vivec's silence is one of the most haunting and memorable aspects of his story. It transforms him from a charismatic leader and poet into a figure of quiet enigma, inviting players and lore enthusiasts to wonder about the fate of this god who once spoke so freely. His silence is not just the absence of words, but a powerful symbol of consequence, change, and the unknowable depths of divine power. It leaves a lasting impression on the world of Morrowind and the Elder Scrolls universe as a whole, reminding us that even gods are subject to silence and mystery. Vivec's silence marks a turning point for Morrowind, signaling profound changes in its culture, politics, and spiritual life. As one of the tribunal gods, Vivec was not just a religious figure, but also a unifying force for the Dunmer people. His words once guided their beliefs, shaped laws, and inspired loyalty. Without his voice, Morrowind faces a spiritual void, leaving its people to question their faith and the authority of the tribunal. This silence weakens the divine foundation that held Morrowind together for centuries, contributing to political instability and the decline of the tribunal temple's influence. The loss of Vivec's guidance also accelerates the rise of new powers, including the Nerevarine prophecy, and the resurgence of traditional Dunmer beliefs centered around the old ways and ancestral worship. His silence indirectly encourages the Dunmer to rediscover their cultural roots, moving away from the god kings toward a more fragmented but authentic identity. On a practical level, Vivec's silence reflects the diminished power of the tribunal after the events of Morrowind's Great War and the Oblivion Crisis. The tribunal's divine abilities were closely tied to the heart of Lorkhan, and as that power faded, so did their influence. Vivec's quietness is a sign that the era of god kings is ending, making way for new leaders and new conflicts. This transition influences the political landscape, with rival factions like the Ashlanders, House Redoran, and the emerging Temple vying for control and direction in a world where divine intervention is no longer guaranteed. Culturally, Vivec's silence forces Morrowind to adapt. The Dunmer must learn to face their challenges without relying on a living God's guidance. This leads to a shift towards self-reliance and resilience, as well as increased importance of mortal heroes and legends in their stories. The silence also adds to the mystery and legend surrounding Vivec himself, making him a figure of myth rather than a present deity. On a symbolic level, Vivec's silence embodies the complex relationship between divinity and mortality in the Elder Scrolls universe. His silence is a reminder that gods are not invincible or eternal in the way mortals imagine. They can fall silent, fade, or even disappear, leaving their followers to grapple with uncertainty. This uncertainty affects how the Dunmer understand their world, faith, and destiny. It also influences neighboring regions and peoples, as Morrowind's spiritual crisis creates ripples throughout Tamriel. The weakening of the tribunal contributes to the power vacuum that the Aldmeri Dominion and other political entities seek to exploit in later eras. In the long term, Vivec's silence may pave the way for new beliefs and gods to rise in Morrowind, shifting the religious landscape away from the tribunal's dominance. The legacy of the warrior poet god becomes less about his spoken teachings and more about the stories, art, and cultural memory that survive him. Ultimately, Vivec's silence is a powerful symbol of change and transition for Morrowind. It marks the end of an era dominated by god kings and the beginning of a more uncertain future where mortals must find their own path. The quiet absence of Vivec's voice challenges the Dunmer to redefine their identity and adapt to a world without the direct presence of their once great god. This silence resonates not only in the spiritual realm, but also in the very fabric of Morrowind society, politics, and culture, making it one of the most significant moments in the region's history. Vivec's legacy in the Elder Scrolls universe is complex, far-reaching, and layered with mystery. As one of the tribunal gods, he was more than just a divine figure. He was a warrior, poet, leader, and symbol of Dunmer identity. His impact stretches beyond Morrowind, influencing lore, culture, and the spiritual landscape of Tamriel in ways that continue to echo long after his silence. Vivec's dual nature, as both mortal and divine, set a unique precedent in the Elder Scrolls mythos. He was born a mortal, but achieved godhood through the power of the Heart of Lorkhan and his own efforts, blending the human and divine in a way that challenged traditional boundaries. This fusion made him a symbol of transcendence, but also of fragility, as seen in his eventual silence. His teachings, often poetic and cryptic, filled with allegory and paradox, contributed to the rich spiritual fabric of Morrowind. The sermons of Vivec are not just religious texts, they are cultural artifacts that reveal his philosophy, history, and vision for his people. These writings have influenced countless scholars, followers, and even outsiders fascinated by his complex character. Politically, Vivec's legacy includes his role in shaping the Tribunal Temple, which dominated Morrowind for centuries. The Tribunal's rule brought stability but also conflict, as their godhood was tied to the Heart of Lorkhan and the power struggles that came with it. Vivec's leadership helped maintain order, but his silence and the eventual fall of the Tribunal signaled the end of an era and the beginning of profound changes for Dunmer society. His influence extends to the cultural identity of the Dunmer, who still revere him as a hero and a god despite his silence. His image appears in art, architecture, and festivals, and his story is passed down through generations, mixing history and legend. This cultural memory keeps Vivec alive in the hearts of the Dunmer, shaping how they see themselves and their place in Tamriel. On a broader scale, Vivec's story raises questions about power, divinity, and mortality that resonate throughout the Elder Scrolls universe. He embodies the tension between gods and mortals, the risks of ambition, and the cost of godhood. This makes him one of the most intriguing characters in the lore, inspiring not only fan theories, but also philosophical reflection on the nature of existence within the game world. Vivec's legacy also touches on the idea of change and impermanence. His silence and the decline of the Tribunal remind us that even gods are subject to fate, and that no power is absolute. This theme echoes in many parts of the Elder Scrolls series, where cycles of rise and fall, creation and destruction are central motifs. Finally, Vivec's legacy influences gameplay and storytelling in Morrowind and beyond. His presence is felt in quests, dialogue, and world building, providing players with a rich, immersive experience that blends history, whether through his writings, his temple, or the lingering questions about his fate. Vivec remains a captivating figure whose legacy invites players to explore, learn, and wonder. In summary, Vivec's legacy is one of paradox and power, silence and speech, mortality and divinity. He shaped Morrowind's past and continues to influence Tamriel's present and future. His story is a testament to the depth and complexity of the Elder Scrolls universe, making him a character that fans keep coming back to, uncovering new layers and meanings with every playthrough. Vivec's silence marks one of the most mysterious and enduring moments in Elder Scrolls lore, leaving a legacy that still reverberates through Morrowind and beyond. His last words may have been lost, but the impact of his existence continues to shape the world around him in subtle and profound ways. As a god who once spoke in riddles, poetry, and prophecy, his sudden silence feels like an unfinished story, inviting endless speculation yet grounding itself firmly in the events that followed. The silence is not just the absence of voice, but a powerful symbol of change. The fall of the tribunal, the shifting of power, and the uncertainty that grips the Dunmer people after centuries of divine guidance. This silence forces mortals to navigate their world without direct divine intervention from one of their greatest heroes, pushing them to take control of their own destinies. Vivec's silence can also be seen as a reflection of the complex nature of power and the cost of divinity. His rise and fall highlight how godhood is not guaranteed permanence. It is fragile and tied to the beliefs, actions, and events that surround it. When the source of the tribunal's power, the heart of Lorkhan, was lost and their secrets revealed, Vivec's silence became part of that unraveling. Yet, despite the loss of his voice, his teachings and influence remain alive. The sermons of Vivec continue to inspire, challenge, and puzzle those who study them, offering wisdom wrapped in mystery. His image, statues, and temples stand as reminders of his presence, and his story is told by scholars, priests, and everyday Dunmer alike. Vivec's silence has also opened space for new interpretations and theories. Some believe he transcended physical form, becoming one with the void or the fabric of Nirn itself. Others see his silence as a form of punishment or penance, while some think it signals a dormant power, waiting to return when the time is right. This ambiguity adds depth to his character and keeps fans engaged in ongoing discussions about his true fate. Beyond Morrowind, Vivec's silence impacts the wider Elder Scrolls universe by symbolizing the fragile balance between gods and mortals. His story is a cautionary tale about ambition, sacrifice, and the limits of divine intervention in a world shaped by mortal actions. It reminds players that the gods in this universe are not infallible, but fallible beings entwined with the fate of the world they influence. Ultimately, Vivec's lasting echo is not just in what he said or did, but in what his silence represents, a turning point where the divine withdrew, leaving room for change, growth, and new stories to unfold. His silence invites players and lore enthusiasts to explore the mysteries of Tamriel, question what it means to be a god or mortal, and appreciate the rich tapestry of history that makes the Elder Scrolls universe so compelling. In the end, Vivec's silence is both an ending and a beginning, a powerful echo that shapes the past, present, and future of the world he once ruled, and the people who still remember him as a god, a leader, and a legend